Hi, my name is John and I'm the founder of Bings Academy, which is a one-on-one tutoring organization here in New South Wales that helps students reach their educational goals. In a few weeks, it will be the New South Wales Selective exam in 2024 on May the 9th. And with more than 15,000 students expected to do this important exam that day, students are scrambling to ensure they are adequately prepared for it. We all know that the ideal preparation is that typically they start right after OC, so then they have just over a year of preparation to really get ready and ramp up compared to the OC exam. Although sometimes if a student started even later or has been inconsistent with their study, then this can largely fluctuate from student to student. Today, I'll be going through how I would prepare if I only had a few weeks to go and I had a student who had to do this exam. This year will be my 10th year of teaching students, and as someone who attended Penrith High School and then transferred into Girraween High School, I have a lot of personal experience even with the new selective exam format. Let's get into it. First of all, I'm filming this video on the 20th of April, so there's about 18 days until the actual test date. Let's start off with what we're not going to do. With less than 3 weeks to go, I would not do any slow improvements like adding words to your spelling book to grow your vocabulary or be reading a lot of storybooks. I wouldn't be going through general math concepts in year 6 either. The reason why I wouldn't do these types of activities is because they can produce results and they're definitely beneficial, but it takes a much longer time window until we see a tangible impact. Learning 30 new words for your vocabulary or learning how to master fractions just won't cut it. Passive learning through reading books is great for students to do when we have at least a year, so they're exposed to more text types and writing styles. There's only so much you can be exposed to in less than 3 weeks. It is not recommended to do these types of activities when preparing for a timed exam, and we should ideally be already following a study schedule so you know what to work on each day. If you're doing more extracurricular or playing more games than actually studying at this point, I would honestly be quite surprised, depending on the school that you're aiming for, and you might have to change it around or rethink your priority. Remember, you're not sacrificing these activities, which is great for a well-rounded student, mind you, but you're just pulling back on it until you finish these exams. If you made it into the school that you're aiming for in year 6 for year 7 entry, it saves you time and potentially money from trying to transfer in future years. So by putting in extra work now, it'll save you a lot of work in the future. Instead, I would first prioritize the study based on different exam weightings and allocate the time accordingly. If you saw my previous videos, you already know that writing has a higher weighting compared to what it was before with the old New South Wales Selective exam, before in 2020 and prior to that. Now we know that the reading and mathematical reasoning section is worth 25% each. Thinking skills is 35% and writing is 15%. This means that thinking skills should have a larger allocation of time put towards it. By going through more thinking skills questions during these last few weeks, you will get a better return on your time compared to if you spent a significant portion of time into writing, for instance. Thinking skills has verbal, spatial, and numerical reasoning, and although they say that no prior knowledge is assumed to answer any of the questions, exposure to these type of questions will undoubtedly be useful. Let's say you study 10 hours a week. If it was up to me, a higher number of these 10 hours would be provided and given into thinking skills. Although if you're already really strong in thinking skills, that's when you might want to dedicate more time in other subjects. You have to adjust it to your specific situation. Students who typically only want to do what they're good at. I haven't found a student that deliberately wants to focus on their weak areas. If you know you're good at English, you're going to spend more time on English. But the fact of the matter is, we need to be very tactical with the exam. If we know that thinking skills is 35% and writing is 15%, then you've got to spend more time on thinking skills, especially if it's your weaker area, because there's a lot more value you can get from it. And what we do at Bings Academy is that we deliberately focus on areas and questions that students struggle in. If they're weak in poetry, we intentionally do more poetry questions in class, and we may also provide it for homework. On the other hand, if you're already really strong in a particular topic or subject, then we wouldn't even spend time on it. because it's better use of our time to spend it on something where you're not weak strong in. You may love writing, but with so many text types to remember, there's a lot to actually memorize as well. And the key part is it's only worth 15%, which is less than a quarter of the exam weighting. Yes, it is more than the previous and old New South Wales Selective exam, where it wasn't even worth 15%. And that's also a reason why there are a lot more guys make it into selective high schools rather than girls. But like I said, now they have adjusted a bit more, but thinking skills still has a significantly higher weighting, more than double in fact. With such a short time until the New South Wales Selective exam in May, it is important to simulate real exam conditions wherever possible. Tutoring sessions should ideally incorporate time sessions for students to do questions in and outside of classes. Students should ideally do a higher number of questions compared to usual. Ideally, they are practicing with more difficult questions because the entire idea is to be more comfortable with practice questions that are more difficult than the exam. If you have not done the past papers yet and there's a few weeks to go, I recommend going through them. Do a set of 4 exams all on the same day to really simulate the test. Get your parents to mark it and your tutor to evaluate your writing response. Following this, spend time on understanding your mark and how it can be improved. Identify which question areas you got wrong and you have to learn from it. After you go through the entire test, a few days later, you do another set of 4 exams, perhaps the 2022 past paper. The reason why I recommend doing 4 exams all in the same day is because that's what actually happens in the day. You will have 2 tests back to back with a short break in between, typically around 20 minutes, before you do the remaining 2 tests back to back without any break. Wherever possible, with less than 3 weeks to go now, you want to complete full-length tests in a quiet environment and only have access to things that you will have access to in the real exam, like a pencil and an eraser. As this year, it's still being done on paper compared to next year and beyond, which is now online. This not only will help with time management, but will also build confidence and mental endurance, which is crucial for the actual day. Discussing test strategies with peers and tutors can help implement techniques, but I don't think there's too much time to radically change your habits or approach. If you're not used to skimming and scanning in the reading comprehension exam, and with the test in a few weeks, it's going to be very difficult for you to naturally get used to something that you have not actively used before. Try not to be too experimental with what you have or haven't done in the past, but try to refine the basics specific to the exam and be tactical with it. That's what I personally had to do. If I had to teach a student, we only had a finite amount of time to work on it, or if I was a student and I was preparing for this exam in a few weeks. Instead of cramming, students should schedule regular review sessions to go over content covered during the week. And remember, we only have 2.5 weeks to the exam, so we've got to be smart with it. This method helps transform short-term memory gains into long-term knowledge that we can actually use in the actual test. Using tests and tools like flashcards for quick review sessions can help you retain content. Parents can easily help with this. For instance, if you're revising how to do fractions that involve multiplying or dividing them, perhaps the parent can ask the question, how do you multiply fractions? And the student has to provide a step-by-step approach without referring to any notes. Or if it comes to writing, the student will have to share the ins and outs of what is in an email text type, which was given in the 2023 New South Wales Selective Writing Exam. If they're unsure, they can refer to the flashcards or get prompted with notes to hopefully remember it so they can recall this information when it comes to test time. With only a few weeks left, I will not actively seek new resources either, unless you have done everything that you have access to. Try to make use of your available resources like online practice tests, past papers, or any books that you've purchased, or any work supplied from your tutors. Buying access to an entire bunch of sample tests will not be very beneficial unless the student has the time to do them properly. Free resources are likely going to be very low quality, or in buying a new book where the student can only get through a few pages and there's still more than half the book to go is not really worth it, unless it is actually required and a clear weakness for them. I see year after year, students and parents buy a bunch of books prior to the test, and then they have to sell it right after the exam and most of the books are actually untouched or without any annotations on them. And I see this on all the Facebook and online forums too. And parents regret buying these additional resources when they weren't even used in the first place, making them lose money and ultimately making them feel a little bit of remorse. Don't be like that. It is important to maintain a good balance as well when it comes to preparing for the selective exam, especially as we have a pretty short time frame. This includes a healthy diet and regular physical activity, which can improve concentration and reduce stress. This means not eating junk food all the time, which is an absolute no-brainer. Otherwise, you will get something called a food coma and be very sleepy when it comes to studying or preparing. If you don't walk around or do any sports, you may feel quite tired easily and find it difficult to concentrate. I don't think you need to do a lot of sport, but just finding time to play tips at school or walk around the school during recess and lunchtime is actually quite beneficial. Don't be like some students who try to study during recess and lunch. There really is no need, in my opinion, even if you are aiming for a really high ranked selective high school. Yes, it's important to make it in, but realistically speaking, if you're trying to cram in as much information in 20 minutes of recess time at school when it comes to study, there's really not much you're actually going to retain in your mind personally. It's quite rare for someone to radically learn a whole new concept or for them to improve their marks drastically by just spending 20 minutes of recess time. I'd much rather you hang out with your friends and having a run around wherever possible at school. Well-being means having a good balance, and what we think of a balance will really differ depending on the student and our upbringing. Personally, for me, I might find that studying 2 hours a day preparing for the New South Wales selective exam is quite normal. But for other people, maybe just 1 hour a day is already a bit of a stretch. So try to find a good balance for yourself. In saying that though, you need to find what works for you. If you try to cut corners and say 30 minutes of study is way too much for you already, then you're only cheating yourself. Got to be honest with yourself and know what actually works for you. And this is where a parent or a tutor can also assist. Overall, for the selective exam on May the 9th, 2024 this year, there are different strategies that can be followed to maximize students' readiness for it, regardless of your current level of preparation. This is prioritizing and being smart with the subject that is being focused on. For instance, thinking skills is worth 35% and writing is 15%. Reading and maths is 25%, so you can try to focus on the areas that are worth more, right? Simulating real exam conditions where possible and doing past papers if you haven't done so already. If you're in year 5, no need to do any past papers. In fact, I recommend saving them until you're in year 6, as there's nothing more accurate compared to the past papers. So they're very valuable. Reviewing work incrementally and through review notes so it's easy to retain through flashcards, and finding the right amount of study and exercise that works for you is so crucial. And I believe this is what you need to focus on in the last few weeks. Don't stress if you don't actually make it into a selective high school either, or not into the school that you originally planned for. Just try your best. When I did the test in year 6, I was reserved for Penrith High School. I didn't even go for Girraween High School because I knew I wasn't smart enough for that school. But eventually, I did manage to get an offer for Girraween, make it in, and I did eventually get into Girraween High School, but not just in year 6. It was eventually in year 11. When I managed to transfer in year 8, 9, and 10 to Girraween High School, that was a big improvement in ranking for me. And I just wanted to share that with you guys because it's not always going to be the end of the world. If this is something you're passionate and serious about, it is possible. It just takes a lot of effort. But hopefully you guys make it in this year so you don't have to try out 3 years like I did in the future. It is extremely difficult, but not impossible if you really want to do it. But if you have any questions at all, do let me know. Like the video, subscribe. If you have any encouraging thoughts and comments, share it down below. I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of other students that are going to be doing this exam in May this year. And after the exam, come in and write down and share how you thought about it. That's essentially what happens every year anyway. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.